You'd think something as monumental as a unique Roman border frontier wall, Hadrian's Wall, would in fact stick in the memory of time. Well, it turns out it didn't. Welcome to the story of how Hadrian's Wall was incorrectly named for over 1,000 years, and that was probably deliberate. And for the eagle-eyed viewer, you'll note that this isn't Hadrian's Wall, but it is a Roman wall. We're here at Silchester, Caledonians attribatum, budget restraints, cold, wrong time of year, 6-hour drive. Enjoy. Hadrian was an incredibly proactive emperor. It's said that unlike many before him, he spent over half of his reign outside of Italy. His time in Britannia certainly added to those figures. The year is 122 AD and Hadrian had ordered the construction of the wall that would define the northwesternmost frontier of the Roman Empire, perhaps largely in response to a major rebellion between 119 and 121 AD, regardless of its real reason for construction: to keep the Scots out, to reduce the Roman army numbers, to monitor trade, and maybe to keep people in. A wall from sea to sea would be built. Consolidation, perhaps, because it stands to reason. In any effect, Hadrian is your man. This frontier continued to be problematic. Antonius Pius, just 20 years on, constructed the Antonine Wall across what is now the central belt of Scotland, maybe 100 miles to the north of Hadrian's Wall. 60 years on, and the frontier would remain a burden on the back of any emperor. Depending on which account is read, Severus made great gains and also failed at the same time. He became ill, returned to York, where he would die. And here is where our story becomes quite interesting, because within 150 years of his death, we now have numerous accounts of Roman historians talking of his success. From Victor in 360 AD to Chronicon in 380 AD, they all suggest that Severus built the wall 133 miles from sea to sea. He protected Britain with the wall, and this was his greatest glory in his reign. Now, whether they all knew, or whether the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the next emperor, covered this up to be this resounding victory, I guess we're never really gonna know. But somewhere along the line, someone is telling a big old porky pie. That was it, really. The Romans had fooled themselves, and well, that would just continue on. Enter the monks and the year 730 AD. Bede suggests that the wall stood 12 feet high. He also noted that it had been written about before by Gilda, built in the 120s and constructed by Severus. The lie would continue on. Nobody seems to be doing anything to challenge it, and why would they? This is established wisdom and it all kind of adds up, so why challenge it? In fact, step forward into the realms of the 15th century antiquarians, and questions are starting to be asked, but perhaps not the right ones. So we now think that the big old ditch next to the wall, the vallum, well, we now think that was Hadrian, but of course not the wall. The wall was definitely Severus. Why? Because everybody said it was. Absolutely love the Silchester walls here around Caledonians attribatum, kind of hidden by all of the vegetation, even though it's winter and there shouldn't be too much. Kind of adds to its lure, its mystery. Now, if you've read pretty much any non-fiction book, you'll probably be aware of what a footnote is. The little annotation at the bottom of the book, sometimes containing a reference for what's been said, sometimes a little explanation detailing something not perfectly relevant to the story. So let me introduce you to a clergyman named John Hodgson. Now, John wrote what is considered to be the longest footnote in history. In fact, it was over 170 pages long in its own right. John Hodgson was a Northumbrian clergyman, and it was clear that not only was he extremely passionate about history, but he also was very thorough. John was writing a book. In fact, it was more than a book, it was an encyclopedia. A history of Northumbria. It's really difficult to describe to you how detailed his work was, how thorough it was. Now, by the 1830s, we're up to volume 3, and it's volume 3 that we are interested in today. But the wall, the Roman wall, well, that wasn't really of great interest to him. He pretty much spelled that out. The history of Northumbria was his thing, but the wall was becoming quite an issue. Because the more that he looked into it, the more obvious it became that it wasn't Severus. Severus. Why is it Rebecca Severus or The more it became obvious, it was actually Hadrian that built the wall. You know, the guy that did the big vellum ditch thing. Interesting, thought John, but not that interesting. I'll just stick it in me footnotes for my book, because it's not that relevant, and surely no one's in a great rush to see it. 173 page footnote. Now, John was to die before volume 3 was finished. It was published shortly after by a friend. Of the 450 pages or so, well, 173 were the footnote, where John describes that he could have written more, but admits few will read what he had actually written. And to be fair to John, it seemed like that was the case, at least for a while. Whenever you read about accounts of early aspects of places like this and random ancient landscapes from the early antiquarians, Llewellyn, Camden, Stukely, you get the impression that they're just after recognition for their descriptions rather than actually doing the work on the ground like John Hodgson. The power to change this, the power to stand out above the noise and the parapet of the accepted notion that this was built by somebody else, came purely from the relentless work that he was doing at the time. Essentially, he was doing archaeology better than anyone had done before, perhaps owing to his meticulous nature, and yet there are very few sources which credit him with such work. Perhaps if it wasn't for the work of John Hodgson, well, perhaps then the likes of the John Collingwood Bruce would never have even mentioned it in his book. The Bruce Roman Wall Handbook, a 326-page detailing the look at Hadrian's wall, the man responsible for so much of what we understand today. Well, without Hodgson, who knows where our understanding of Hadrian's wall would be. And of course, so where would archaeology be without John Hodgson? Well, probably in the same place as it is now, but it would be good to attribute some of its early advances to the relentless work that he did. And of course, the bigger question from today is, why were we led to believe that Severus was the emperor that built the wall? I have been Paul.
And I've been Rebecca.
And if you want to follow up to this video, you need to go and subscribe to Rebecca's channel, because we're going to race home. I'm going to take the Roman road.
And I'm going to take the railway.
You're going to take the railway, which is pretty much what your channel is all about, kind of modern take on transport with a few
History
quirky
snippets and
history
things.
snippets thrown in. See you this time next week. Thanks for watching.